This is an interview with Harry and Rose Butikofer for the Valley Historical Preservation Project. The interviewer is myself, Margaret Foxwell, assisted by my husband Tom. The date is May 27th, 1998, in their home. We thank you for granting us this interview. The material will be used to further interpret the heritage of the region. It will be primarily used for educational purposes, but may also be used in promoting economic development and tourism. First, I would like to hear your full name, Harry.
Harry Butikofer.
And yours, Rose?
Rosemary Butikofer Denler.
Rosemary Butikofer Denler. Rosemary Denler Butikofer.
Okay, right.
When were you born, Harry?
1917, 10th day of November 9th.
November 10th. And where?
How old?
Where?
Oh, Elgin
Fayette County.
or Fayette County.
Where were your parents born?
Born, you said?
Yes.
Oh, I haven't. No, I wouldn't.
Yes, your parents were both born in
Oh, were, you said?
Yes.
They were born in the Elgin area.
In the Elgin area.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did any of them emigrate?
No.
Any of your
No.
ancestors? Rose, your full name was?
My full name was Rosemary Denler.
All right. And when was your birthday?
I was born in December 6, 1923, at my parents' farm in Clayton County.
Where were your parents born?
My father was Ben Denler. He was born January 1898 at his parents' home in Clayton County.
Would you like to tell us your immigration story?
Yes, I would. My father married Louise Millenthaler in 1922. He was a hard-working farmer, and his father's name was Gottlieb Denler. He came to the Elgin area at the age of 16. He was born and educated in Blayenbach, Switzerland, and to pay his way to America, he worked at hard labor for a farmer in the Elgin area from early morning till late at night for nearly 3 years. He married Rose Hofer. She was born here, but her parents were born in Switzerland. My mother was born at her parents' home in Hohenwald, Tennessee. She was the fourth child of Jacob Millenthaler and Marie Denler. Her parents both came from the Bern area in Switzerland, and were married in Fayette County, Iowa, December 5, 1891. They lived in the Elgin area for several years, then traveled by train with 2 young children to a Swiss settlement in Tennessee. Their third child, a son, was born on a train in a boxcar as they reached Tennessee. I was named Rosemarie after my grandma Rose Denler and my grandma Marie Millenthaler. Shall I tell about school? I started school at the Cherry Valley School, number 8, in Marion Township. While in the grades, my family moved to a farm in Highland Township, and my brother and I attended District number 3 Country School. One of our teachers was Hilda Meyer, later married Fritz Wolf. She was not only a teacher, but best friend and pal to all pupils. She was janitor and a nurse, too. She taught all 8 grades, reading, writing, and arithmetic, with each grade consisting of 1 to 4 pupils. Along with these chores, she taught us each to play a musical instrument and organized the Tiny Tots Jolly School Band. We played for many parades and programs. I remember playing at the Elgin Opera House many times. Miss Meyer was the most energetic and really special teacher I ever heard of. She saw that each of us had not only an instrument, but a band uniform, and before each performance she finger-waved not only the girls' hair, but also the boys'. Classes at country school were never called off because of blizzards or icy roads. My father always saw that we got to school. Many times he took us to school with his team of horses hitched to a sleigh. One foggy morning, my brother Al and I started across the fields for school. We needed to cross a neighbor's land. After coming and crossing the fence, I said, "We go this direction." and he insisted we needed to go the opposite way. Neither one of us would give in. So we went home, and I'm surprised we could still find our way home because no buildings were in sight. We needed to go to Elgin to take and pass our 8th grade exam to enter high school. I was the only one in 8th grade at our school that year and was so shy and bashful. I had never been in the Elgin school building. I'm surprised I ever entered high school, but I graduated from the Elgin High School in 1941. My mother's relatives lived in the Des Moines area, and most summers while we were growing up, our family visited there for a week. The highlight of those days was being able to drink ice in our tea, with real ice in the summertime. This we thought would really be living the good life. At our home, with no refrigerator, we would have cold tea, but not ice. We always wished for the day when we too could have ice for our tea. That would be so wonderful. At last, our wishes came true, and we had REC in our neighborhood. Harry and I were married August 17th in 43 at the Baptist Parsonage by Reverend Zoschke. The first year of our marriage, we lived on a farm in Fayette County, then moved to Clayton County and have lived here ever since. Harry did spray painting starting in 1940 with the first airless sprayer to operate in the area. As our children grew and were able to help, they and I helped with the painting. We mixed paint and cleaned buildings and during the 50 years span applied approximately 45,000 gallons of paint. We have 6 children: Merlin, a teacher at Delhi High School; Louise, a farm wife; Richard, a pharmacist in Cedar Rapids; Robert, a materials engineer for John Deere in Cedar Falls; Gary, a farmer on our home farm; and Keith, who died in 1972 at the age of 13 of leukemia. We now have 14 grandchildren and 2 great-granddaughters.
2. I would like to back up a little. Today's Echo has a story about Hilda Meyer Wolf's 85th birthday.
Oh, yes.
So you will be interested in reading that.
I've always remembered her birth date. Every year I've sent her birthday card or called her.
She has the same birthday that I do.
Oh, I see.
And on our birthday, 4 of the Elgin ladies, including our partners, had a breakfast downtown. Eileen Toma next door, and Hilda, myself, and Bonnie Hines.
Oh, the birthdays are the same day? Or
Same day.
Oh, interesting.
And we gave the early risers donuts.
Nice.
I also would like you to tell us something about your brother.
Okay.
And did you have sisters?
No, I have no sisters. I have, I was born in 23, and the next year a brother, Albert Lee, was born. And in 1928, Brother Glenn joined our family, and then on Christmas Eve in 1929, William was born. 2 of my brothers have since died. Bill died of cancer in 1982 at the age of 53, and Glenn also died of cancer in 1994 at the age of 66.
I noticed this lovely picture of your parents. Are there any other pictures here that you would like the camera to catch?
Oh.
Let's get that in there, Tom. You have to name who the boy is, too.
Oh.
Hold it up, tell us.
My parents, Ben and Louise Denler, and is our oldest grandson or grandchild, Preston Johansson. It's his graduation picture.
Nice picture. I thought we should have that picture of your parents.
If you want to.
Time to think and gather our thoughts on what we want in there, and Willis wants to show a picture yet.
This is a picture of my grandfather, Gottlieb Denler, the man that came from Switzerland, and his wife, my grandmother.
And you told us when they came.
Yes, I told when they came.
Where did they settle?
Oh, in Clayton County they were, after they were married. Of course, first he worked for people to pay his way here, which I mentioned before.
Yes, but did they have a home waiting for them?
No.
Or they built?
They built a home, yes. It's in Clayton County, just kind of over the hills from here.
Was it a log cabin or what?
No.
No.
It was a wood frame home. Built, I don't know. It was, I can't say when. And probably there was an older house. I don't know about that.
We hear stories about people coming and living in caves.
Yes, no, I don't think they did that.
Until they could exist.
He did say he worked for this farmer, and they had a basement of sorts, and his bed was down in this basement. Always real cold, never had any heat, and he was really had a hard life at first.
Now let's just switch to Harry. Who were your parents, Harry?
Albert Butikofer. Albert Butikofer and Marie Butikofer, I should say. And Albert was Marie Schiffbach. You want to do that over?
That's right.
Your parents.
All
right, repeat it to us then.
My dad was born the 10th, 1888, and died at age 73. My mother was born.
Say her name first. She was a Schiffbach.
Marie Schiffbach, 1890, and died at the age of 102.
Where did they live?
In Fayette County. Clayton County.
Clayton County.
Clayton County. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did they farm?
Yes. Farmers.
Everyone did.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Pretty good sized family.
What's that?
I say a pretty good sized family.
Could you tell us, name your family? Brothers and sisters?
Mm-hmm.
The oldest was
Anna.
She has passed away.
Harry. Reuben. Elizabeth. Paul. Bert. Ruth. William. And Shirley.
Albert, you forgot.
Oh, did I forget?
I think so. There were 10
Mm-hmm. 10 of us.
children.
Tom, did your sister Grace teach some of these?
Yes, she did.
I think that Grace at one time had, 14 Bitikofers in her school?
16.
Or 16 Bitikofers in her school when she taught school in the Cherry Valley Schoolhouse.
When she was 18 years old, she named all 16 of them.
Oh, yeah.
18. 80. She just had her 90th birthday a few weeks ago.
Oh, uh-huh.
And I've been amazed at her. She does never taken the Elgin Echo or anything, but her memory is great. She could name all of your family right now.
Ain't that something? Yeah.
Did they all continue to stay right around here?
The two girls are away from here, Ruth and Shirley.
I'll tell them. Ruth is in Illinois.
In Illinois, yes. And Shirley is out western Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Rock Rapids, Iowa.
Harry, you've always lived in this area, right?
Yes.
Where was your family home when you were growing up?
Where was it, you say?
Round the bend from here.
Yes,
Okay.
whatever. Right close. Half a mile away from our...
All right, let me hear something about your childhood memories.
Okay, then we'll get to that. I have a brother 2 years younger than I. As we were growing up, we always played tricks on each other. As we were cleaning the barn one day, I told him that I would give him a ride. He was to get into the manure carrier, and that was on the cable with an automatic trip. He got into the little bucket. I gave him a shove, and out he went. The automatic trip dumped him onto the manure pile, and you can imagine the rest. You know, here. Another time we were plowing each with 3 horses on a walking stock plow. I told him to get us a bottle of wine out of Dad's barrel. Because the folks were going to town, he tied his horses to the fence post and left, while I made a trip around the field. He was really going to do it up good and got us each a bottle. But the folks got home too soon. As Reuben was coming out the basement door, Dad met him right in the doorway. Dad said, "Set the bottles on the shelf and come back here to me and get your admonishment." Of course, he told Dad that Harry told me to get it. With a sad face, Reuben told me all about how it happened. Dad had given him a lift in the behind with his foot. Had given a lift in the behind with his foot to Reuben. At once, with a smile on his face, he said, "Well, I've had mine, you got yours coming." I could think about that all afternoon as I was plowing. While growing up, we always heard stories of ghosts and cemeteries. I was scared stiff of a cemetery at night. Reuben wasn't a bit afraid. Dad had a 1924 Overland car with worn side curtains on them, tied together. No dash light, and the only door we could open was the one on the driver's side. I was always the driver. One night, coming past the cemetery, Reuben reached over and, in the darkness, shut off the switch. I was the one to get out right by the cemetery gate and crank the old car. I had one eye on the crank and the other eye on the cemetery gate, watching for a ghost to appear. If a guy had come out of that gate, I'd have gotten home on foot before the car. Down the road about a mile, I said it was sure funny that car had to stop, shut off right in front of the cemetery. That's when he told me he had turned off the switch. We'd have gotten by the gate with no problem. He said he paid dearly for that trick after we got home.
Harry, where was that cemetery? What
Yeah, Apostolic down there.
Apostolic.
Yeah. Went around that way home. Or we used to always go to town and that way. Now, of course, we go past Russ Larson's, you know. Yeah, that's the Apostolic Cemetery down there. And your stories, I'll tell you, we used to hear stories when we were just kids. That's why we got scared of the place, you know. The old folks would talk about that. About the raunchiest one I heard was when one guy, when they was going by and a guy come out of there and didn't have no head on him and he's smoking a pipe.
Good find there, Harry. Just keep this up.
Yeah. So now.
Your kids were in community day plays, many of them, and it used to be the kids would have play practice and then they'd go get ice cream or somewhere. But one night they decided to go to the Apostolic Cemetery after play practice. Unknown to them, Eugene Medbury was coaching the play, I think. He had come down in a sheet, scared the living daylights out of those kids when they got there. Because he was a ghost.
Sure.
Yeah, that's so.
You have another story?
Yeah. I hope my glasses aren't working too well. I hope I can do
Doing
that.
fine.
When the When the Depression started at the end of October of 29, the stock market fell and the banks closed for a while. Then they opened up so people could get money out to pay their taxes. Afterwards, they closed again for a while. People learned to save their money for necessities and buy only what they needed. My dad owned an 80-acre farm. He had 10 work horses and used horse machinery to work the farm. They had a family of 4 girls and 6 boys, so they needed plenty of work to keep the boys out of trouble. In the morning, we'd get up and chase the horses into the barn. First, we curry-combed them, which meant to comb all the sweat out of their manes and tails and off of them from the day before, and then feed and harness them. While someone was working with the horses, 3 of the other kids milked the 18 dairy cows. Then they separate the milk from the cream in a cream separator. We fed the skim milk to the hogs. Mother would take some whole milk out to use in the house. They kept the cream in a tank in the basement to keep it cold until the cream hauler came to pick it up. The cream hauler would come twice a week and take their cream to sell at the creamery in Elgin. While the horses were getting combed and the cows were being milked, someone would feed the chickens. They sold eggs to an egg dealer for 15 cents a dozen. They'd take the money they got for the eggs and go buy their groceries with it. After we fed the chickens, we went in and ate breakfast, which consisted of cooked cereal or pancakes. Then we hitched up the team to do the field work. We could only work the horses 8 hours a day since they got tired. Butter was sold for 25 cents a pound. We used very little, only on a Sunday. Otherwise, they used honey because my dad had a big bee yard, so they had honey all the time. They also sold honey. They'd sell 9 55-gallon wooden barrels of honey to Dayton's in Cincinnati, Ohio. Another source of income was firewood from the timber. The boys would split the wood to a size to fit into a cook stove. They would take the wagon load 3/4 of a cord into town and sell it to people. 3/4 of a cord of wood cost $10. It was a job that kept the boys out of trouble. They would also clean out bee boxes in the basement. On Sunday morning, they'd curry-comb the horses, braid their tails, wrap it around in a roll, and tie it up with twine, so they'd look nice for church. Then they'd hitch them up to the buggy. There was room for 5 people in the buggy, 2 in the front and 3 in the back. The rest had to walk to church. It was about 1.5 miles to church. When the roads were muddy, which was most of the time, they used the horses and buggy. But when the roads were dry, they took the car. They had the 1924 Overland. We had a church service in the morning and one in the afternoon, and dinner at noon. So when it was their turn to serve dinner, only the driver rode in the buggy. There was 30 loaves of bread in the back of the buggy with a can of milk, coffee, honey, and jam, and the butter was up in the front on the seat beside the driver. In the winter, when all the family was at home, they'd butcher 3 hogs, 1 cow. This was their meat, and they never bought any in town. The rest of the livestock they sold. My uncle took the wagon full of hogs to Elgin and sold them for $2.50 per 100 pounds. And now they'd sell for $50 per 100 pounds. Beef cattle sold for $40, $50 a head, and now they'd sell for $700, $800 a head. Dairy cows sold for $25, $30 a head, and now they sell for $1,500 a head. When the boys were too young to help, Grandpa would hire some men to help him on the farm. He could hire good young men for 25 cents a day plus room and board. They worked long hours, did a good job, and did not complain. Harry remembers his dad talking to a neighbor and owned a Hart Park tractor. Harry said they used to jokingly call him Hart Power. It used 10 gallons of gas a day. Grandma thought that was a lot of gas to use. The work got done twice as fast with the tractor, and he could work longer hours. In 1934, Grandpa purchased their first tractor.
That was your dad.
Yeah, F-20 International. It cost approximately $600 new. During the Depression, a new International mower cost $140. Now it would cost $11,000. A new cultivator would have cost $35 and a grain binder $200. Back then they didn't have private telephone lines. There were 18 parties on one line. So when 2 people were talking, 16 other people could be listening too. One of the neighbors would grind feed, corn and oats, for the neighbors once a week. The feed grinder had an engine on it. He'd give one long ring on the telephone. They'd mean everyone should pick up the phone and listen. Then he would say, "We're going to grind feed today." During the Depression, some of their entertainment was playing records on a phonograph, listening to the radio, creek fishing, going squirrel hunting, hunting in the fall. About every 2.5 weeks, they'd go into town for groceries. They did not go very often because there wasn't money to spend and they had food at home. When they bought food, it was mostly staples. They bought flour and sugar by the ton. They used most of the sugar to feed the bees. Is this here something, Susan? Or what was this?
Yeah, read it.
When they'd make the trip to town and back, they'd use 3/4 of a gallon of gas. It was 10 miles round trip. Gas was 15 cents to 17 cents a gallon. The conditions were probably the same all over the country, worse in some places, better in others. But they learned to save and not to spend. Prices to things are approximate figures.
Now,
Well,
now town was Elgin.
Yes, yeah. I probably should have said it that way. See, that's.
We could guess that. When you mentioned the skim milk, you fed to the hogs.
Yes.
All right. What did you put in that? My dad always talked about slop.
Yeah,
I
slop.
never knew what was in it.
That's what was in it. And then you would ground oats. You would ground oats and then also minerals and stuff and, whatever it took, and mix that all up in like a 5-gallon buckets. I know we used to carry up to, 15, 16 5-gallon buckets carry them from here till across the road to the Hawks where the trough was, stuff like that.
Did you have to stir it and let it ferment a little?
Was
Yeah.
it mixed ahead of time?
Yes, we did. We mixed that in a big barrel first, and put the ground oats in it, and the minerals and the concentrates, and into a big barrel, and then dip it out there to feed the hogs.
When you sold eggs in town, was that in Elgin?
Yes.
Like every other country town, they would trade eggs for groceries.
Yeah.
You made the butter and sold butter?
Yeah. No, we didn't sell butter, just for ourselves. The butter was
okay.
bought,
When you where was your church? It was the Apostolic Church?
Yeah. Well, the German bottom.
Well, it was the Apostolic Church.
Apostolic Church.
Yeah.
Close to the cemetery at that time, and then the later years, the church was moved to Elgin.
Yes.
And as he was growing up, you always went to Sunday school and church at the Apostolic Church.
Yeah, down where it was, before.
It's a beautiful church up there.
Yes, it's nice up there at Elgin
and they
now.
still have their meals.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Yeah, still.
You must have had a lot of beehives.
Oh, like 150, 60 swarms, beehives. Mm-hmm.
And you sold the wood in Elgin.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Who wrote the last part of this, where he was referring to Harry and Grandpa? Last part that.
You told it to Heidi, a niece, and so when he said Grandpa, it was really his father.
Yeah.
I knew, I understood that, but I wondered who.
Yeah.
I wanted to clear it up for anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any special school day memories?
Oh.
Must have been some tricks played, or were you?
Well, yeah.
There's tricks played.
I really.
Box socials. What did they have any of those then?
The what now?
Box socials.
Oh yes, they did. Yes. Yeah, of course it was fun. It was about all.
Everybody came.
I suppose. I should add that I suppose we usually at deals like that we'd make sure you'd have probably after it's all over with a bottle of wine handy and a couple of cigarettes to smoke yet,
You don't want your kids to know all this, do you? Or your grandchildren at least?
They know it anyway. Everybody tried to smoke a cigarette or two out behind the barn when they was young, of course. So.
You want to show this picture of worship?
What is it?
Your mom.
Oh, I see.
On her 100th birthday.
Can't see that from here, though.
You can't see it?
No, it's too small.
What? Oh, does it help to get it up close or what?
I'll see what's happening.
Oh.
There we go. There we go. Now you have it back.
Let's go back to do you have any special school day memories, Rose?
Not really, except I told about going to playing in the band with that when I was in grade school and how we enjoyed that so much. And
what did you have for instruments?
I played the clarinet. Al, my older brother, played the tuba.
In country school?
In country school. And Bill played the trumpet and Glenn the saxophone. And we just had everybody in school at a certain age learned music, read notes. We all read notes. And Gene Winger was the only one that played with our band that was not in our school.
Were any of them in the, Thomas told about the orchestra that used to play in church in Elyria.
That was the generation before
It
I.
was. It must have been a great deal of fun.
We really enjoyed it, and there weren't many teachers that would take all the time to teach all the students music, and she saw that we all had uniforms, which I said about, you know.
And what were they? Did your mothers make them?
I can't remember who made them, but I still remember they had white buttons down the front, 2 rows on each side, and they were red. Our jackets were red, and we wore black skirts or trousers.
Be fun to hear that band play, wouldn't it, Harry?
Yes, you're right.
At that time, we didn't have recordings to make, I guess.
No.
Where did you go to church?
We always went to my dad's parents went to the Apostolic Church, and my dad did as he was growing up. But when my folks married and moved to Highland Township, we started going to the Elyria Community Church, and went there. We went there for Sunday school, and whole family, our family was all baptized, mother and father, at the same time. I don't remember what year it was, but and then as Harry and I started dating, he joined the Elyria Church too. I should tell this about our wedding. Are you okay? We were well, kind of dumb teenagers, I guess, and we didn't know, but we got our marriage license in West Union, and we're going to be married at the Little Brown Church. Well, then someone said, well, you cannot buy your license in one county and be married in another county. So there was a problem. What was our minister's name at that time, Tom? Wharton. Wharton was our minister. And we had this date all set up to get married, and he was on vacation out at Clear Lake. So that is why we happened to be married at the Baptist parsonage, because our minister from church was on vacation. People think that's really something, that we were married by Reverend Zoshki, a Baptist minister, but that was the reason.
It worked, didn't it?
It worked, yes.
Mhm.
It's worked for many years.
There's fun stuff at second grade, smarter.
Well, my dad had a lime quarry, and of course, it's the very beginning of when people learned that lime was good for the land, you know, to put lime on the land was the very beginning, and he happened to have a quarry, and he got a couple of guys from Ames come out to analyze it and also see how much there was there. So they took a rough estimate, and they said there was over 1 million ton of lime in the area there. So he opened it up, and people started to haul lime and started spreading their land, and it's probably the very first lime that was ever spread in the area here. And Ralph Schaefer was a man that hauled tons and tons and tons of lime, and it was all loaded with shovels, hand shovels. And so then, after a while, then of course the rock quarries took over and ground lime, and that quit. So that's the story on that.
And where is that now, that pit?
It's still right there. The pit is open yet, but there's still thousands of tons of lime there. You know, I suppose if I were guessing, there probably was probably 1,000 ton hauled out of there till they quit hauling that altogether.
Who loaded it?
Huh?
Who loaded it?
Well, my dad helped me and Reuben and Ralph Schaefer and whoever other people come and haul themselves. Then you know,
Wagon loads.
there was wagon loads and trucks, and there was lime hauled as far as Gunder. A guy from Gunder come and loaded lime out of there with a truck, you know. Yeah.
How did they spread it?
Well, now at home we just spread it with the shovels, and then they had them lime spreaders that they hooked behind the wagons, you know, and you shoveled it in, then that spread it, you know, with a whirler on it, you know.
Lois, do you have any any special memories of the Depression?
I don't think I was aware of it, except that we were very conservative, and when we went to town, if we got a nickel, we thought we were very rich and could buy ice cream cones or candy, and if we got a dime, we usually came home with 1 nickel. And we always had food, of course, on the farm. I think the younger folks were probably not as aware of the Depression years as
No.
some that were a little older, maybe.
Harry, what about the REC when it came to you?
Oh, the REC, finally, talking about ice cubes and so on, and how nice it'd be to have lights, special. What I really took interest in lights was yard light. Was so special, and I just have to say that was probably one of the greatest things that happened to this area when REC come by. You know.
Oh, then we come on. Do you have any important people that influenced your life a great deal?
Everybody around.
I just don't.
Your
really,
mother, I suppose, was.
Well, of course, yeah, the folks, of course, both mother and dad, and then I suppose wouldn't I have to, is it on?
Yeah.
Okay, I suppose I would have to give Eldon Lent a pat on the back, that's all we do.
All right, tell us why. Tell us why.
I worked for Eldon for 19 years, I guess, then turned out 19 years. I worked for him spring and fall. And a very, very good guy to work for. And the first day that I worked for Eldon Lent, he told me, he said, you keep track of your hours, and he said, anytime you want money, ask me, the money will be there for you. And that's the way it was all the time.
You drove
And,
planter? Your planter?
in the spring, I would plant corn for him. In the fall, I would
run.
run
How many rows planter?
16-row planter, up to 16-row planters. Of course, not to begin with, but in the fall, I would run the combine, 8-row combine.
For how many acres?
We started out with, I suppose I started to work for Eldon with like 250 acres of corn, and ended up with, in the Elgin Wadena area, ended up around 2,000 acres then.
What about down in Texas?
Well, Texas, I made a trip down to Texas the fall. What date would that be now?
About 3 years.
96, wasn't it? Yeah,
Yeah.
that I was down 96. And I run the combine for him down there for 28 days. And I went over 2,600 acres of corn. And that was not even quite half of it. We run 2 8-row combines. And so he moved to Texas and bought 4,400 acres of ground down there. And the what?
Where in Texas?
Oh, DeKalb, Texas, yes.
What about your Aunt Lena? You better tell about your Aunt Lena,
just
how she's sick.
I was gonna add a little bit more about Eldon here. He, I broke, was it my leg that I was, no, makes me study now. I guess I had a broken leg, wasn't I? And then, couldn't walk then, and Eldon come.
No, you were having hip problems.
Hip problems, yeah. So Eldon, fall of the year, Eldon come, and he said, do you think you could manage to run the combine? I said, well, I suppose if I was in it, I could. I was getting to where I had to have crutches to walk,
That was in 89.
80, oh, yeah. So anyway, I hear, he said, would you come and run the combine if I would take the pickup and haul you right to it and help you get into it? I said, I sure would. And that's what I done. Run combine for him, even with my hip real bad.
And then that fall you had hip surgery.
Yeah, fall.
Hip reconstruction.
Yeah.
And do you still run the combine?
Now this fall, last fall was the first time. Or no, I did last fall, yeah.
A little
Yeah.
while, yeah.
A little while. I run down here to Wadena, then I didn't go to Texas.
But no planter in.
No.
Well, you do paint. When did you find time for that?
Well, of course, see, that gets to the place here. We never had milk cows here. We always, then our cows was in pasture having calves and so on, so we didn't have chores or, a lot of chores. That's how our painting got done then,
But
And
you
so-
did the field work in the
The
fall
field.
and the spring, and then in
Yeah,
the summer
yeah.
painted.
Well, when did he get you into it?
After the kids were old enough to go along, we all went along, and we would take our picnic lunch along and paint till we were tired, and we'd go home again. And as the kids, the boys, all earned their college by painting, they did brush painting on their own then later years. So we've been busy.
And you're still painting.
And we're still brush painting homes mostly now, not so high
There
anymore.
was years and years and years that we always had from 12 to 15 shops waiting for us.
I could believe that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't suppose you had any time to have any special entertainment. But did you go to movies, dances, hunting, traveling? What were you?
No, we didn't do much of that. I'll tell you though, we did do a lot of world traveling. Probably more than a lot of people around in the area here. We've been all over Western Europe.
We made how many
Spain.
trips to Switzerland?
Huh?
How many times did we go to
I
Switzerland?
guess 4 trips to Switzerland.
And I still have lots of relatives that we visit, and they visit us. And just a couple of days ago, had a telephone call from a distant cousin from Switzerland, wondering how we were and telling us about their news.
Has there been someone here in the past year?
Not this year,
No,
but
not this year, no.
last year there was on my mother's side, second and third cousin of mine spent a week in the area. We spent about every day with them, but they did have reservations made in the motel where most of the time they would come and stay with us a week at a time and could not speak English.
I understood that.
And by the time they'd go home, we were pretty well able to carry on a conversation in Swiss again. But then it would leave us because as each of us were growing up and we started school, neither one of us spoke English. We learned English in country school, I guess. And now there's none of my family anymore speaks Swiss, and Harry's brothers, I guess, can speak yet, but very seldom that we talk Swiss anymore. We should speak.
I bet you young people in the family wish that
Yes,
you did.
because they like to go to Switzerland and visit relatives, and now the people in Switzerland are starting to speak English, but we get mail from Switzerland, and it's written in German.
Have you taken some of your family, your children, to Switzerland?
What
Not really, no.
Well, Bob and Liz, our son Bob and his wife
the last time they
went with us. It'll be 4 years ago. That was
their last.
when we got to Switzerland, they had a big family reunion for those relatives from Iowa. We were the honored ones.
Harry, do you have relatives there too?
Yes, a lot of relatives. Yes, lots of Butikofers over there. We, although they're so far back, they're way back, and so we haven't really visited with many Butikofers at all. But we did go through the telephone books, and there's way more Butikofers over than there is in America that we know here. Yeah.
Do you think I should tell about one time in New Glarus when there were people there visiting from Switzerland, and Harry always is real excited about Swiss people visiting with them. And he liked to tell them, I'm Butikofer, and I came from my relatives, I'm Swiss. So we met this couple walking in New Glarus. And Harry doesn't like when I tell this, but I think it's great. He walked up to this couple, and of course, when he starts talking, I don't have much chance to get a word in edgewise, but I work at it. So here he talked a while, and pretty soon he said, "Ich bin Butikofer. Ich bin a Schweizer." He said, "I'm Butikofer and I'm Swiss." So finally, after a while, they didn't make much of that. They weren't really excited about that Butikofer name. So after a while, I said, in Swiss, I told him I was Dendler. And my grandparents came from Switzerland, and they said, "Oh, we know lots of Dendlers in Switzerland, and they're such good people. We have Dendler neighbors, and we just think the world of the Dendlers in Switzerland." And Harry doesn't like for me to tell this, but I enjoy telling it.
I was only 12 inches tall.
And there were so many Butikofers in Switzerland.
It amounted up.
Why don't you tell us something about this, coming to this magnificent setting you got here?
Well,
you better start. Gary was getting married.
The what now?
Gary was getting married.
Yeah.
So
right to begin with, you call it magnificent, Tom?
You bet.
I myself don't think so much that it's so magnificent. We got lots of people come, and they say about pretty the same as a nice place, you know. Especially the insurance men, you know. That's the first thing they tell you, you know,
Yes,
to make
sir.
you feel good.
Yes, sir.
So then,
yes, sir, yeah.
my answer always is, it's not so adorable, you know, but it's just good enough for who it's for. And,
You built this yourself, though, after Gary's married.
yes. Yep.
When Gary was married, we decided that he needed to be where the animals were going to be.
Yep.
So we thought it was not the place for us. We needed to go to Elgin, to town, or else have a home otherwise. So then we decided we wanted to stay in the country.
It's beautiful.
Then you built a
Walked up the road here, looked at the old hog pasture here. That's what this all was, hog pasture along here. And looked terrible, and got up here. I said to her, right here's the place for the house. And the creek was running within 8 feet from the road out here, where your car sits there. The water run right under the car there, the creek. So we had this all, got 2 big earth moving machines, and got that out of the water, come out of the dirt come out of the pond, and hauled up here for a house site. And then the dam also, too. So that's the story on that thing.
Beautiful spot, and the birds.
Yeah,
Well, can you add any more that you want on this tape? Are there any special ethnic traditions that you follow? Or that your mother had that's lost? Either one of you. Foods?
Foods, well, we still have to, when I make something and it's like newer relatives, newer recipes, he says that's not the way my mother did it.
No.
My mother did it.
Don't just quite taste the same.
Yeah, maybe we should shut it off a while.
Oh, you got it all you want?
Yeah, I think we need to.
Well,
Which is okay.
Something.
Say something.
Yeah.
tell us about that waterway, how it came to be.
Harry thought it was such a beautiful spot. He had bulldozers come and move dirt up toward the road so we could have a house there and have a pond. And he always thought the pond was so wonderful. At one time he said, "I don't know why we built this house. I just want the pond." So then I said, "Okay, I'll live in the house. Where are you going to live?"
Who's going to cook for you?
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you fish in it?
We have fish, and people come and fish, but
her out right nice,
Thank you,
right
Craig.
now.
Yep, there we go.
I guess that I started this after I retired from the farm and didn't have not much else to do, and I always feel like I should be doing something, so I started to go to sales and I buy this stuff during the spring and fall, and summer, and then I would take it home and I set up in our basement to clean it up. It was all rusty and everything, and I would spend hours and hours to clean the stuff up. It was a good pastime for me, and I enjoyed it. And now, it seems like now they want them tools just the way you find them. They don't want them cleaned up, so I don't know why I done all the work now.
Pull the baby book out. Pull the baby book out. So you put it out this way, so little ways away so I can see it.
Yeah.
Where'd that come from now?
That goes around.
Rose.
This was from my Aunt Alda, my dad's sister. She raised her children in that as babies instead of buying these elegant baby baths. That's why we used those. And then when Merlin, our oldest, was born, she said, "Would you like to have this?" And so I had this for all our children.
Okay. I'll just take the thing apart here.
Small wrenches like this here, and bring them home and clean them up and display them and
Some of them you made handle.
and display them. And I guess I've showed them many times since the different wrenches and stuff like that. And, an old German accordion here, and an old phonograph and. Corn planter plates, real old corn planter plates, horseshoes and so on, and so different things like that. Here's some a gadget that I made. And,
Horseshoes.
From horseshoes.
From horseshoes, yeah. And here's some more horseshoe stuff that I made. I don't know how you want them to.
You're coming too close.
Little rockers.
Oh yes.
Made out of pony shoes.
Those great big wrenches mounted out there.
Yeah.
Little heater there.
It's for wood saws.
Yeah, wood saw blades and stuff like that. I don't know, this thing here is always in the way, but don't show it too good. Probably shoot one of them on a little bit. But
got that.
I started to collect them, and as of now, I got 6 of them now.
Oh yes.
And look around in the fall of the year for them, and I've collected 6 of them now.
Maybe you should show them how you sawed wood, that wood that you made.
Yeah.
When your dad hauled it to town.
There's
There we
the
go.
old cross cuts that we used years ago that we talked about the wood when I was explaining about selling
You
wood.
bet. Gus, Margaret, come out there. Bring your thing.
Say, man, right here. Here's a deal that we got to do. I think Tom Freebie even remembers.
That ain't the other
Had one of those.
The 2 cans here that Tom make
There you go.
a shot of them, and them are cans that the Standard Oil Company, and I remember when old Frank Greenley, you knew him,
You bet.
Tom,
You bet.
hauled them on his gas truck, and he would deliver the oil that the farmers needed in them cans.
That's right.
Take them out and dump them into your container.
That's right. Well, bring it along here a little further, Margaret.
And that goes back a long way, Frank Greenley.
This is further than go.
That's about it, bud. I think we got a pretty good rundown of a lot of stuff. Not very professionally shown by me, but the stuff is great.
Yeah, it's a beautiful tea kettle. Iron one, Tom. That's heavy.
You bet. The old time tea kettle.
Give you a dime for it.
He always says the women have to be strong to handle it.